Flash floods can be deadly and beneficial. Today we'll go over 8 tips for staying safe during flash floods. Hi, I'm Sharee Harris with Fathom Realty in St. George, Utah. Today I'll teach you how to enjoy the monsoon season and not get caught in a flash flood. Number 1 is flash floods can happen within minutes. It can come all at once because the dry, scorched desert earth isn't used to rain, and so it's not going to absorb the water very well. And so it runs off and accumulates really quickly, causing the flooding. So it's important to make sure you check the weather before you go hiking in the mountains or in the canyons. Number 2 is to know that a flash flood can happen when you have blue skies. This is because it can be raining upstream from you and come flooding down and hit you. And so check the weather not only where you're at, but upstream from where you're going to be hiking. Number 3 is to know that flash floods usually happen during our monsoon season. For us here in St. George, that's from mid-July to the middle of September. Number 4 to know is that flash floods can be deadly. 2/3 of deaths claimed by flash floods happen in vehicles when the drivers try to pass through the floodwater. So they say 2 feet of floodwater is enough to sweep vehicles away, move a 100-pound rock, uproot trees, or level buildings. And I remember being one of our first rainstorms here, being on a street that was flooding, not 2 feet, so my car wasn't being moved by it. But it was scary to actually even drive in it because I was sitting there, stopped at the stop sign, and the water was rushing by me, and it was hard to know whether I was moving or not. It was a really weird sensation. So when the rains start falling, we don't do a lot of driving around town. It's best to stay home whenever possible. Also a tip, if you're out about and the flash flood is happening, the people that often die are the ones that try to cross the water. So it's important that you are trying to get to higher ground. Number 5 is to know that most of these storms happen in the afternoon. Not always, but most of the time. So if you make sure to get your hikes done in the morning and get home before afternoon, that's also going to keep you safer. Number 6 is that flood damage is rarely covered by your homeowner's insurance. So if you do live in a flood zone area, it's important to make sure that you do get that extra flood insurance. Number 7 is to know that flash floods are a natural occurrence, and they're quite beneficial with the way that they spread the nutrient soil around. They help lessen wildfires, getting everything wet, and replenish our water sources. So they are needed. And they can be absolutely beautiful. I love seeing the waterfalls in the mountains after a rainstorm. And number 8 is more about after the flooding. So one thing to watch is we get sinkholes, there'll be debris, rocks, dirt, all that kind of stuff on our trails and roads that does need to be cleaned up. And so you have to be aware of that if you need to be out and about soon after a major rainstorm. One thing that I found so cool when I first moved here was so I have been hiking a lot. There's a lot of trails also near my house, and there would be places where the trail kind of dipped down and there were signs that warned of flooding. And I thought, this is weird. I'm in the middle of like a field and it never rains, so why are there like flash flood warnings? But after our first major rainstorm and I went out there walking, there was dirt and debris and stuff across the trail in these places where they had warned, but they cleaned it up so quickly. I was so impressed with the city and how they just got to work and all the trails were cleared off. Now, if you're looking at the trails that are more like up in the mountains or the canyons, it is interesting to see how those will also change and become more narrow in areas where maybe they've washed away or there's bigger boulders or rocks. And so sometimes the trails will be completely closed down, or there's just a few areas that you have to be a little bit more careful when you're hiking. So if you choose to go hiking soon after the rainstorms, you've got to be aware of water that may still be running, as well as how the trail will have changed. So monsoon season really is beautiful and doesn't have to be scary. It was something very new for me when I moved here. I had never seen anything like this before, and so our first major rainstorm, I went out on the porch and just all this water coming down, and we lived kind of along this hill, and it was garbage day. And I remember watching all these garbage cans were like floating down the road and coming to the base of the hill, and I had never seen that kind of force from the rains. And then driving around town, other rainstorms, picking up kids, noticing pumper, like I guess they're pumper trucks in some of the intersections pumping out the water. And I'm used to like snow plows, so that was just an interesting sight to me. So it was different from where it came from, but I do love it. I love this season. So the US average rainfall is 38 inches a year, and we receive 10 here. So we really, most of the year, are pretty dry and sunny. And so if you want to know more about what our hot weather is like here, check out my other video. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.